Hey, what's going on? It's Steven. Welcome to an all-new Murder Monday. It's a new week of quarantine, of not having anything to do, so thanks for hanging out and listening and sharing and subscribing to the podcast. I appreciate it. This new episode is called Broken Promises. Nick Howard of Sacramento, California was like a lot of 18-year-old high school graduates. He lived with his parents and sister, and while some are excited to move on and move out, Nick liked living at home. His parents were tough on him and said that he either needed to have a job or be going to school. He chose a job. Nick had his own car and was a night owl, waking up late in the day, going to work, and then he'd go to hang out with friends until all hours of the night. And in February 1997, Nick didn't come home. Nick's parents called friends and then police after they checked their answering machine. Nick had left a message at 12 o'clock in the morning saying that he had some car troubles and that he'd be home soon. A friend said the last that they knew, Nick had left his license at a restaurant. So they went to that restaurant, which is when they found a note on the door that Nick had left asking the owner to call them about a missing ID. The road that led to that restaurant was not just a regular road. It was a winding road that ran parallel to the largest river in California, the roaring Sacramento River. A drive that, with just one mistake, could mean disaster for someone not paying attention, which is where search crews went and eventually found Nick's car, fully submerged in 18 feet of water. The driver and passenger side window down when they found it. Police forensics were able to determine that when the car hit the river, that it was still running. There was no sign of Nick. The only thing of Nick's that they did find in the car was his badly mangled glasses. Did Nick maybe fall asleep behind the wheel? Or was there something else going on? Investigators checked the car and noticed a number of odd things. The vehicle was a manual, and when it was discovered, it was found to be in neutral. They also found a white residue over the inside of the vehicle, which police soon realized was from an open bottle of oil, which was found in the trunk. But then even stranger, the cap from the bottle of oil was found in the engine. It was placed on the throttle in the car's engine, therefore making it possible for the car to drive without needing someone to be there to push the pedal. And the one piece of evidence that they had of Nick was his glasses, which were found submerged in the car. They wondered, was he actually wearing them when he hit the water? After doing a number of tests, police concluded that the damage didn't match the accident. Was Nick trying to disappear? And why? Well, they got their answer 3 weeks later, when his body was discovered a quarter-mile downstream against a dock in the Sacramento River. An autopsy showed that he had water in his lungs, which meant that he did drown. There were now more questions than answers. The autopsy also found a blunt force trauma on the side of his neck. While he may not have been conscious when he entered the water, he was still breathing. This wasn't an accident. 18-year-old Nick Howard was murdered. But what police didn't know was that Nick's greed and his own mother were a motive. Find out how next on Murder Monday. In February of 1997, Nick Howard, an 18-year-old boy from Sacramento, went missing. A few days later, his car was found in the Sacramento River. But then, a few weeks after that, his body. Nick was a kid with a lot of friends, and like many teenagers, he was tough to motivate. And his friends said in the weeks leading up to his disappearance, he said things like he planned on being a millionaire before he turned 30. Investigators found a number of clues that made them believe that this was not an accident, but that it was set up to appear to be an accident. At first, police thought that Nick had maybe attempted to stage his own death, but after finding his body, they realized that wasn't the case. So that left the question, who would want to kill 18-year-old Nick Howard? Police dug and found something unique. Nick had a life insurance policy, which wasn't strange, everyone in his family did. But something that was unique about this insurance policy was that Nick Howard had an Allstate policy that paid more than just a couple $1,000s to the beneficiary. The beneficiary would receive $850,000. And when his family went to find it, they found that there had been an amendment made. And the name that now appeared sent shivers down the spine of Nick Howard's mother, Patty. She thought that she had found a forgery, but it was actually much worse. To understand why Patty Howard was so afraid, we need to go back 20 years, when Patty Howard was in high school and she met a guy named Ralph Marcus. The first time Ralph Marcus ever went to her house, he attempted to wrestle her to the ground and kiss her. Patty said no, and over the following years, Ralph would show up in their lives every once in a while, never doing anything scary, just weird. Ralph was a flashy, wealthy guy that drove around in nice cars and wore nice clothes. He had asked Patty to marry him multiple times, and each time she declined. When she ended up getting married and having kids, Ralph Marcus reportedly offered Patty's mother $10,000 to help break up the marriage. And the last straw for Patty was when Ralph offered her $50,000 for one of her eggs. Patty told Ralph that their friendship was officially over. But what she didn't know was that Ralph Marcus and her son were still buddies. They would hang out in secret, Ralph often taking him on gambling trips to Lake Tahoe, trips that Ralph financed. When police searched the home, they found the insurance paperwork for Nick Howard. Nick's sisters said that Ralph was such a brilliant businessman that he could take close to $1 million and easily turn it into $4 million, almost overnight. What Nick Howard didn't know was that Ralph Marcus was a master con man that made his living off of insurance fraud and gambling. Ralph Marcus's life was a scam, as was his relationship with Nick Howard. Problem was that police didn't have the proof they needed until they had an idea. They would search Ralph Marcus's garage, which is when they found a Valvoline oil can, which was from the exact same lot as the one found in Nick Howard's car, which proved the oil belonged to Ralph Marcus. Police believe that Ralph Marcus killed Nick Howard as an act of revenge against Patty Howard. Ralph Marcus used the promise of big money and never having to work again to get Nick to go along with this fraud. But what Nick didn't know was that he would never get $1 of the money. Ralph Marcus was eventually found guilty of murder and sentenced to life in prison. After Ralph was found guilty, Nick's mother Patty said this on TV.
You just got to teach your kids that you're the #1 fan of theirs and teach them to listen to you. No one out there is for their good like you are. It doesn't matter what they say. There's too many con artists today.